that key thing to remember is red on yellow. Don't touch snakes. Yep.
Red on yellow, yellow on red.
Red.
Just don't touch the snake.
The rope is free!
What?
The rope is free!
Ah, shit!
Liam's fallen into a crevasse, and I immediately thought he was dead, or at least seriously hurt.
And my guts had been ripped out of my body and were being contained by my flight suit.
I know a mountain lion is on top of me.
Welcome to another episode of the Wildertainment Podcast, where we tell entertaining wilderness adventure stories. Today we have a repeated guest, our first repeated guest, Chewbacca, as we call them in the outdoors. He is a NOLS graduate, so graduated National Outdoor Leadership School. He's also a Wilderness First Responder. He's currently going through the AMG's American Mountain Training Program, and he's also a Leave No Trace Master Educator. So as outdoorsmen, you guys don't know shit about how to minimize your footprint out there, how to help the environment and really make the outdoors a place that everyone can enjoy for years to come. So we're going to teach you guys a lot of tips that we did not know back in the day and that we've learned through trial and error, things that we hate as pet peeves, and basically how you should behave in the outdoors. A lot of good information. If you're listening to this podcast off of the Rescue Swimmer Mindset podcast, where we have like this mini series of the Wildertainment on there, please go subscribe because we're leaving the Rescue Swimmer Mindset very soon. It's going to become its own entity. So subscribe on YouTube, give it likes, and please just go to the Apple Podcast and just give it a 5-star rating for the love of God. So a 5-star rating, nothing more, nothing less, even if you hate it. Help the community grow. We're going to become better, and leave a comment. So Apple Podcast, do comments. And then a lot of info is going to be shared today. Some you may disagree with. So go on YouTube and just give us some hate. Tell us why you hate it, why you love it, what you've learned, what you haven't learned. Help the community grow. Wildertainment Podcast. Subscribe. Do that stuff. Blah, blah, blah. Here we go. Leave no trace. The 7 principles to become a more conscientious outdoor educator. Here we go. Chewbacca, Wildertainment Podcast. One thing that was funny doing that last podcast with Archie was just like how seriously he took it. Like he took it as like this blown up platform where he was going to go like famous within like 24 hours.
He's going to tell all his family.
Yeah, I think he definitely bumped up the views. Like it's like up in the upper hundreds. I think that's just all Archie's family.
Nice.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming back on. You're the first repeated guest on today. So maybe you could be my main, like, maybe who's that guy that was always on Letterman, the bald guy?
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Shoot, the band leader. Yeah.
I hate him so much. I hate him. I can't stand him.
You want me to be that guy, huh?
Yeah, I want you to be the guy I hate. That just talks inappropriately, and every time he talks, you just go, shut up.
Can I be more like Jimmy Fallon, secondhand man?
No, I prefer Conan O'Brien's guy.
Oh yeah, Andy. That's all I know of him.
Yeah,
first.
wait, Jimmy Fallon, is that the Hispanic guy?
No, that's the guy that's got the Roots that plays as his side band.
Oh yeah. He's really like, his present is minimal though. So
Yeah.
you could be that guy. Yeah, you could just be there in like the top right corner of my every podcast, just kind of smiling and being like, yeah.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Then I'll throw in a bass loop here and there and be like,
all right. Before we roll into what you're here to talk about today, which is L&T, Leave No Trace. We're going to dive into like the principles of how to be basically just a better camper that's more environmentally conscious, something that I'd say all us recreational adventurers should be aware of. Let's just talk about a little bit, just kind of recap what we talked about last time. You are gearing up for the Triple Crown, right? You've already completed the Appalachian Trail, the
Pacific Crest
Trail, and now you're gearing up for your final journey, right? Which is what again?
The CDT, the Continental Divide, 3,100 miles up the backbone of the Rockies.
And last time you were saying that one would be the hardest journey, and why is that?
Yeah, it's gonna be tough. I just heard stories. I can't say much about it because I haven't been out there yet. I mean, I've been in the Rockies and I know the winds, and the CDT goes right through the winds in Wyoming. And I just remember that being really beautiful, but also, it had its own challenges.
Yeah.
Wyoming, Great Basin area. There's like a lot of people tell me that's a really boring stretch where it's just flat and you're walking on high desert and there's like a lot of water carries. But it's every adventure has its own.
Yeah, but last time you were speaking about how there's like this unspoken beauty in the desert area that you just kind of got to look for it. Like there's its own vegetation, its own like living organism that often gets overseen as just like a dead wasteland, but it's truly not.
Oh yeah. I mean, coming from South Carolina where it's like really vegetative and green, I got bored of it. And so seeing desert is a nice new experience. But who we had, do you remember his name? The guy that packed in all of our food for us in the desert canyon section?
Yeah, we call them Desert Santa, like like handlebar mustache man. Actually,
right.
I'm trying to plan a canoe trip to set routes in those crack climbs out in Utah in the Canyonlands area. And I need to get in touch with him because he's like a canoe guide out there, real hardcore guy. So yeah, Chewy and I were in NOLS and, we're out there for a month straight without touching civilization or any kind of like public lands or not public lands, but any kind of public areas. That said, you can't carry like, I guess you could, but carrying a month worth of supplies is pretty brutal. So I think the most we carry is 9 days or so. And this muscle or mustache handlebar, Desert Santa, as we called him, would come and give us our supplies, and it's super like kind man, play the guitar and like tell us the tales of the desert, right? But anyway, so what about him?
Like that guy, I wish I could remember his name, but he was part of like the Desert Solitaire group or the Monkey Wrench gang. He went out there and he discovered something about himself. And that's one thing about the desert. If you also think about like religion in total, you think about like a lot of the main religions coming out of desert too. There's a really religious background, the desert is. So there's a lot to be thankful for about it. But yeah, just coming from South Carolina, it was new and it was exciting. And I still think that there's a lot of beauty out there that I haven't just discovered. So for somebody that was born in the desert, I'm sure they're sick and tired of it. I think South Carolina would be beautiful to them. But for me, it's like, I need to explore more of it in a way.
That's interesting though. You think there's a correlation between religion and the desert?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Interesting. And why do you think that is?
You think of like the religions of Islam, you think of Judaism, and you think of a lot of necessarily like Taoism or Buddhism, but Christianity, for example, like all of those ones came out of some sort of need for survival in some way. Not saying that religion is just for survival practices, but you get in touch with a lot of holiness because you realize what's sacred, and I think in a way, when we were out in the canyons, seeing some of those water pockets, that we had water from, it was like, this is a natural source where like a lot of different animals come together. And so because you have to kind of like treat these resources differently, it makes it a little bit more like you're grateful to have these things. And so I don't know, it just sparks this idea in my mind of like, there's got to be something beyond, ourselves in that way. I just see the desert as being, just that, there's a lot of illusions, a lot of mirages. There's a lot of, people that have experiences in deserts.
It really is like, it's an enchanted place. Whenever you go there, you just feel, well, first of all, like you are on a different planet. And yeah, every time you do find one of these little niche outcrops that are just different, then yeah, you perceive that as, I guess you see the beauty even more so than when you're in a densely vegetated area. And then in comparison, it's, it feels so alive.
Yeah. I mean, I'm no theologist, but, just the idea of the deserts being pretty spiritual. A lot of people go and, trip on ayahuasca or something like that and have their religious experiences. You look at, the Navajo and, the Native Americans that lived out, on the prairie lands, for example, and those sorts of things. And I don't know, maybe the religious aspect to them is different. I've never studied, Cherokee, what they believe necessarily, and Navajos or anything like that. But I'm sure that there's like a separation between like what the two, believe in, depending on their climate.
Yeah. Speaking of doing ayahuasca in the desert, I don't know if I ever shared this story with you, but Lurch. So Lurch is a 6'4", I believe, Marine Corps veteran. So he was in NOLS with me and Chewy, and he was in my desert section. So again, we were out there for a month. And, I guess a typical thing when you get out of the military is, whether you like it or not, a lot of veterans, they kind of want to experiment with drugs, especially if you're like young, and which he still was, right? I think he got out, he was like 22 or 3. So, I think he was kind of in that state of, hey, I missed this opportunity in my youth. I'd like to explore those things. So we're out there in the desert, and he's like, man, I really wish I could, smoke some weed or something. Or like, you ever hear of peyote? And I was like, oh yeah. I mean, there's actually some in the desert. Yeah. And he's like, really? And I was like, yeah, I'll just keep my eye open. I've seen it like on our hikes. And he goes like, oh, that'd be so cool, man. And so we're hiking one day. It's like near the end of the section. And I think we've already been evaluated, right? So it's over. Like the section's good. You got like your grade more or less. And we're just walking, and it's just me and him in the back of the group. And I just go, hey, remember how you wanted me to like point out some peyote? Well, that right there, that's peyote. And he's like, really? And I was like, yeah. And he goes like, how do you know? And I was like, well, I just know what the leaf looked like, the flower on it. I just know that that's what it is. And he goes, really? So what do you take out of it? And I just straight face the whole time, like, you take the stem. And he goes like, well, is it good now? And I go, yeah, it's good now. And he's like, how do you know? And I was like, well, you see the color on this like flower? That's what you want it to look like. And I would say that's like prime. So, you wouldn't want to take too much because it's very potent right now. He's like, really? Dang. And he's like, you think I should do it? And I was like, well, I don't want to be associated with it because we're not really supposed to be doing stuff like that. But hey, I'll have your back, and I'll cover for you if you start freaking out. And he goes like, all right, shit. And it's like, should I do it? And I was like, dude, you should probably do it. And he just starts like, he's like, so just chew it? I was like, yeah, you want to chew it, but like, really let it sit in there for a while and like let it bask in your saliva. And he's like, oh, all right. So he's like chewing this thing for like 5 minutes. And we're just hiking. Like, and I was like, and he's like, so when am I going to start feeling something? I'm like, it's going to take probably about 30 minutes. So we're hiking. And I just started describing like things I was personally feeling, but just trying to give him the placebo effect of understanding like things that were happening to him. And he's like, what am I going to feel? And I'm like, oh, you're going to feel a little lactic acid building up in your legs, like kind of a little tingling in your legs, because we were hiking uphill. So it's like a little tingling in your legs, like the blood is rushing back and forth in your legs. And he's like, I was like, do you feel it? And he's like, yeah, I guess a little bit. And I was like, yeah, there you go. And then he's like, what else? And I was like, well, you're going to start really noticing the colors. Do you see how like the colors are really protruding out of the vegetation in this desert? And he goes like, yeah, I guess I kind of see it. It took like 2 hours before he's like, but I gotta be honest with you, Vince, like I don't feel it that much. And I was like, that's because you just ate some weeds, man.
You just gave him some Mormon tea. That's what you gave him.
Yeah. That was actually the Mormon tea. That was something that we would suck on a lot of out in the desert.
Yeah, that was actually really cool. Never had that before.
Would you feel, so Mormon tea is like a stem. It looks like a tiny bamboo, if you will, and you could chew it, and it supposedly gives you a little caffeine boost. Did you experience that though?
I think so.
Yeah, I always chewed it.
It might have just been a placebo, the same, but like I thought I felt more concentration.
Yeah, same. I was chewing that like 24/7. Let's start off my day with some. Yeah.
No, but you can actually find like in what is it, like this in Arizona, there's still places you can find like San Pedro cactus and that sort of thing. Yeah. But,
hey, let's dive into the L&T a little bit. But one thing I wanted to kind of like, I guess a good way to blend into this is a story that I recall hearing when we were in the Wind River Range there in Wyoming about a prior NOLS student. So NOLS, again, National Outdoor Leadership School. And this girl would do this thing where she would carry the entire year all her trash. So whatever trash you'd accumulate over that year, she would carry with her. And the kind of cool reality of her trash is allegedly all her trash for the year fit in about a Nalgene size like container. And I think that's kind of a cool and kind of an extremist approach to life, but it kind of goes to show, like, I guess what we're capable of as far as not throwing out so much trash and trying to like minimize our footprint. Do you recall that story, Chewy?
Yeah. I know a few people like that. Not that I know them personally, but I've read, people that try to go to the extreme limit of like their daily impact being like fitting within like a coffee cup sort of thing.
How do you think they do that? Like, how do you have to really go to specific stores that don't have any containers, right?
You just don't go to stores, I guess.
Well, like, what do? You're picking mushrooms?
Like, I remember coming back from NOLS and Leave No Trace practices, and like, I tried to go all of 2019 without eating at fast food restaurants, because what I realized was that immediately them giving me my bag of food, that everything in that bag just became trash, like that. So I didn't successfully do the whole year, without fast food, but I did, get a large, like, compared to previous years, like I was way down in numbers. But you go to the store and you realize that, like, as soon as they hand you your food in the bag, like, you take the wrapper off of the food, you eat the food, 5 minutes later, that wrapper becomes trash. So knowing your impact really is like using reusable bags. I try to do that. I'm not as good as I used to be. It's all a daily practice. Some days I'm lazy, and I hate to admit it, but it's those people that have that, that real determination that I envy.
But how would you even eat a salad, say, if you wanted to buy a salad at the grocery store? Like, that doesn't come without a container, unless you go to a specific grocery store?
No, yeah, I don't think there's any grocery store that'll let you just like grab and like, the leaves and take it out. Yeah, that's tricky. It's like you have to get into the business to like change anything, I guess.
What do you mean get into the business?
Well, like you think about fresh markets, or you think about, the places that you get your food from. And it's like, unless you're a part of the marketing and, packaging, it's kind of like what you say to them isn't going to matter. You got to, unfortunately, like that movie Salt Lake City Punk, you have to kind of be a part of the establishment in order to ruin it from the inside that way. Not saying we need to destroy the establishment, but I'm saying that we need to definitely pick apart things to make it better. And
everyone listening to the Wildertainment podcast, rise up!
It's my life, and I demand a value to it. I don't know.
I just saw a meme yesterday of what's that old classic British movie of that guy that he goes on like the news. I guess he's like a news what is it, like a news host, and he goes like,
yeah,
I'm sick and tired of it. You got to get mad. You got to stand up and get angry. I don't know what to do or how you should do it, but I know one thing. You need to get angry. You need to get mad.
And you got to exclaim to yourself, my life has value, damn it.
Exactly. And yeah, I guess it was like COVID. You tell us to stay inside and fine, but you don't leave us alone inside the safety of our own homes. You come at us with commercials. Just leave us alone, God damn it. Yeah. Well, yeah, I would say about the fast food though, right? And like the trash, depending on where you live, don't they recycle some of that like paper? A lot of times it's sure your McChicken or something is going to come in a little cardboard thing, but can't you recycle that?
Yeah.
Sometimes not when it's dirty, but
sometimes like I'm finding out my recycling laws here in South Carolina are backwards. Like, we don't recycle glass anymore. We barely take cardboard as it is. If it's got grease on it, it's like that can't be reused. The plastic that we try to reuse, and it's just disheartening, but that's one reason why those rules have to change, is because 70% of the aluminum that we use since the 1970s, I want to say, has been recycled and been reused. But then you look at things like rubber tires, and even though like you want to reuse that rubber, it still takes a lot of resources to reuse those things, because there's people that have to break down the wires inside of the tires, and then you have to melt the rubber down to be reused as tar and this and that. So it's like, you want to do good, but it's also like you might be creating more by trying to recycle these things. And then it's like, that's the fine line. Where do we go as far as, what can we recycle? What is usable? Out at places like Philmont, where I worked, we would try to do a really good job with green cycling. But the people that just threw in the recycle to like this bag had no idea what they were trying to recycle and what they didn't know could be recycled. So you'd have to go through like 50, 70 bags, like big bags of trash. And you'd have to go through each individual wrapper, and like each one that has like a little silver lining in there, you can't reuse. Anyone that has like a plastic lining, you can't reuse. It's like, there's not enough education, and there's not enough really that we're putting into the, idea of sustainability, in my opinion.
What's your knowledge as far as the recycling symbols on plastic / like the numbers 1 through 6?
It's limited. I think that in places, South Carolina might be one where like they just combine those together. But you have like Washington State, which probably does a better job of, saying this is a 1, this is a 2, this is a 3. I'm not really sure what the numbers represent quite so much. It might be like the density of plastic, I'm guessing.
I think it's more or less a specific type, but a book I was reading, I guess, explained that was kind of more or less a conspiracy. Like it wasn't really, it was kind of more of a facade that they created to make people feel like they were sorting out the plastics in a specific way, but in reality, like they weren't doing anything differently with them. And I guess, I don't know, I guess I would have to reread that book, but it's kind of demoralizing to know that, yeah, a lot of times they don't recycle, even though they say they will. You'll put something in the recycling and it won't actually go to the recycling, depending on where you are and where you are located. I think Canada's pretty good at doing what they say they're doing.
Canada.
Yeah, but I think that's at a big expense on like taxes and whatnot. I don't know. I think, apparently the oil companies and stuff, they keep preaching that they're going to help with that system, but they just don't, because it's just a complete loss. It's just throwing money away to actually go through the mechanism of recycling. It's completely at a loss. It's not beneficial. It's not, they're losing money to do it.
I think that's, me and you are kind of saying the same thing. Like, we're losing money trying to recycle. We think we're doing a good job, but there's got to be some other way, some other solution.
I think maybe it's moving away from plastic, right? Like in going down into a different sector of containing device, but what's as efficient as plastic, right? Plastic has been around for a while. I guess it's hard to evolve from that.
Well, you also think like the amount of plastic that gets broken down, and I think in a year people eat 5 pounds of plastic or something like that. I can't remember the exact number, but yeah, there's down in all the way to our soil. Like it's being compacted down to like this fine, like micro level, and you think about what gets washed into our waterways and like what dissolves and what can't be dissolved out of that plastic. And then it's like, well, we end up eating like a credit card once every 3-4 months or that sort of thing. That's spooky.
Yeah, it is. All right. Well, let's talk about, instead of talking about things that we don't quite have control over quite yet, let's talk about things that we do have control over. So again, as adventure enthusiasts, let's talk about Leave No Trace. So you and I actually are Leave No Trace master educators. We're certified for life as educators to I guess teach people how to behave in the outdoors so we can preserve these landscapes for more generations to come. What did NOLS teach you about L&T that you didn't already know?
As far as L&T and NOLS, they gave me better role models. Like I don't know that I came into NOLS not knowing about L&T. I grew up as a scout, and scouting does a pretty good job of, teaching you the basics. And most of my childhood and adult life, I've grown up outdoors, so had some kind of background with L&T. But those that may have shown up into the program not knowing anything about it, I think it was a great way to represent and model the expectations. You know, we had to dig cat holes. You know, we had to pack out our trash. I thought that our leaders did a really good job as far as, you know, we had Yao that did a pretty good job of explaining, like, you know, painting a picture, you know, in our minds about like keeping a pristine area, you know, just that for others to enjoy. We didn't really go into L&T though until like the canyon section, you know, at least for our group. You know, we talked about it here and there and we touched on certain subjects, but until we got to the canyon section, it was like L&T was more of a like practice and less of a conversation.
Interesting. What kind of conversation? I don't quite recall the conversation that we held in the canyon sections. I know we did. How did that evolve into something else?
Well, I know that part of the Master Educator course is that you have to teach, you know, a section and show that you're capable of, you know, teaching others at least one practice of L&T. And so when we got to the canyon section, that's when everybody was saying, you know, okay, this is your time to put together a class, and you have 20 something days to, you know, come up with your points and what you want the class to get out of it. My class was all about using your brain to basically, you know, come up with the right solution for things. Archie's a dude in our class, and the guy that was on the last podcast, he came up with using the natural resources around you. So he actually did a really cool dinner plate where it was, everybody had yucca plant, everybody had, you know, different parts of the canyon desert in Utah. And he explained how each part was used and how you could use yucca for, you know, making things, and how you could boil it to, you know, use it in a lot of sort of different ways. And what was everybody else's? I can't remember everybody's class, but it seemed like the conversation that we had was a lot about natural resources, you know, where we were. And I think every Master Educator course is going to be different because not all of them are taught in Utah. You know, you can have Master Educator courses in Florida and South Carolina. It's like the classes and what you teach might be different. They should all have the 7 principles, but, you know, depending on what your recreation is, you know, boating L&T is much different than climbing L&T.
So let's break down the 7 principles of Leave No Trace with the acronym. What is it? Past the doobie left my Rasta brother.
See, that's one that I didn't know about until we did the class.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the acronym PTDLM. Is it M? MRB. Yeah. So PTDLMRB. So past the doobie left my Rasta brother. So you want to break down like the titles of each principles? Yeah.
One thing that helps me, and I'll do my little hand signals. Number 1, plan ahead and go ahead. Like you're writing down where you're going, making that note for somebody. This is what I use for my kids and for my adults. The adults feel silly doing it, but I don't care because we all need to be silly sometimes.
Yeah. All so right. Anybody, tune in on YouTube and see how you can educate people about Leave No Trace with your fingers. It's basically you break down all 7 steps with your fingers, and your fingers keep adding on. And Chewy's showing it right now. So go ahead. So right. 1, plan ahead.
So 1 plan ahead, write down where you're going, leave that behind with somebody. 2, stay on durable surfaces, stay on the trail, don't get lost. 3, go ahead and pack out what you pack in. This is kind of supposed to be a trowel, as if like you're building a cat hole to dig your poop in. 4, leave behind what you find. This is like a leaf falling to the ground. Leave behind what you find. Number 5, minimize campfire impact. So your hand's supposed to be the fire. Number 6, make some antlers, respect wildlife. Another way that Yao taught us at NOLS was respect wildlife. And you should know that you're far enough away from an animal. If you can cover the entire animal with your thumb by closing one eye. If that animal is bigger than your thumb, then you know you're too close to it.
That's pretty damn close. If the animal's bigger than your thumb, you're pretty close.
Yeah. Like a moose and bear. No, don't get that close.
No.
And then number 7 is, peace sign and a wave. Be kind to other visitors. So when you talk about those 7 principles, that's just a quick engagement with the class. And then after that point, you go into the 5 E's, which is engagement. You explore each 7 principles. You elaborate on each 7. You break them down into what they further mean. You go into a little bit of extracurricular. So you break down one of the principles and you do some teaching on it. And then number 5 is you evaluate, where you get kind of evaluated on your teaching, on how well the class did, and that sort of thing. So if you're getting into teaching, those are the 5 E's. But you start with the 7 principles, and it may be the class remembers 2 or 3 of them. I don't always expect like 7 or 10-year-olds to remember all 7 principles, but giving them that hand signals and that sort of thing really helps to just keep it in your mind.
Yeah. All right. Well, why don't we break them down? So 7 steps. First one is your finger. You're writing down, plan ahead and prepare. So plan ahead and prepare. There's a lot just in that section alone. And I guess one of the things as far as conserving the environment is, and part of planning ahead is try to go when it's a less crowded time. So this could especially apply to places like Yosemite that are super overcrowded. You want to try, if possible, to go in not the peak seasons, just to minimize the impact and, again, not hinder the wildlife and everything that comes with overcrowding a location, especially in the outdoors. What else you got for planning ahead?
If you camp in an area, just know that 60% of the vegetation that grows in that area won't grow above ankle height if you even camp on that camping site more than twice in a year. So you got to think about, where you're going and what kind of areas are impacted by your stay. So planning ahead and,
So I guess in line with planning ahead, finding and knowing where those camp spots are. I know that's a different one. A different step it's the next one, actually, camp on durable surfaces. But that goes with planning where you're going to go, where you're going to travel so you don't get lost. And then you're impacting the trail, which impacts another of the 7 steps. But basically, it's all related to how you're planning, checking the weather hazards. So, you're not calling in search and rescue. And doing your research on as far as like special concerns go with where you're going to go, right? So there's, flash floods in the canyons of Utah. You need to be a little educated on that. If you're going out in, the Rockies here in Canada, you have to be aware of avalanche dangers and be educated on that. One of the things, the steps though, in plan ahead and prepare is repackaging food to minimize waste. So it goes into your equipment preparation too, right? How you're organizing yourself. So, you have a way to pack things in and out. Like you're not just leaving it because it's heavy. You take it in one way, take it out the other. If you're bringing beer out there, that's fine. Bring it in a can, but be aware that you should not. I think we talked about that in the last podcast, how you always hated as a thru hikers finding the Coors Light
it was
cans.
It was the worst beer. The good beer was always packed out. People know how to do that. Like if you're going to be a good backpacker, you're bringing the good beer and you know how to pack that out with you.
Yeah, you're bringing in the craft beer, so you're like, I'll take the can back. That's the right thing to do. So, and then I guess one of the last things too with planning ahead is, as far as knowing where you're going, using a map and a compass or a GPS or something instead of, building cairns or, using paint, using the hunting plastic wraps that you put around a tree, right? Like the tape, the ribbons. Try to minimize that. That said, I don't know about the cairns. I know that was one thing that they mentioned, but cairns, like if you're a rock climber or something and you're trying to help your fellow climber out, I feel like that's a nice thing to do, right? Build a little rock pile so you know where you're going.
No, you're definitely right. Like cairns are great, but also like places like the Smokies. You have the hellbender. What is it? It's not a skink, but it's a hellbender. I think it's like a salamander. But they only grow or live in certain areas. And if you're building cairns around rivers, you're taking away their habitats. But like in places like where you're climbing at, there's typically not going to be like a creek necessarily, but high mountain passes, cairns are really good. But then you have people that don't understand because they didn't research the area, and they'll build rock wall art. I'll go ahead and say that I've done this without knowing, the damage that I might have done to somebody. But I built rock, rock things, not knowing that, potentially somebody could use that as a marker for a trail. And so if you don't know what you're doing by stacking rocks, then you could potentially, get somebody lost in the woods that is looking for these cairns, which is the reason why people, try, to knock them down when they aren't appropriate. So I like to also make sure that number one is basically, if you fail to plan, then you plan to fail. That's how I like to write that up.
I like it.
Yeah.
All right. So that was step 1, plan ahead and prepare. Step 2, travel and camp on durable surfaces. There you go. Chewy just did the walking hiker right there with the 2 fingers. So travel and camp on durable surfaces. What do you like to teach your students about that?
A lot of the times, if I'm talking about camping and hiking on durable surfaces, I'll bring in a flower. I'll bring in like a little bonsai that I've got, and I'll be like, how would you feel about stepping on something like this? The kids will be like, why would you do that? And I'm like, exactly. Why would you do that? And then you think about, just being outside to teach that trail hiking is important, because after a rainy event, I'll get the kids outside and, I'll take them to a puddle and I'll say, do you see this puddle right here? Do you think you want to walk through it, or do you want to walk on the sides? And all of them will say, we'll walk on the sides. And I'm like, yeah, we will. But also, do you know that by walking on the sides, you're creating the path is here and it's gotten bigger. And I'll ask them, why do you think that is? And we'll eventually break it down. And, over time, if you're walking in line with people, the trail that was this small gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So, you want to keep your shoes clean, but this might be important to walk through that puddle so that you don't make the trail bigger. And
I'll play devil's advocate here. Like, when we were traveling in the winds, sometimes the trail is super narrow, right? It's like, and it's kind of high. It's built high. So there's like dirt, nice flat dirt on the side. And then you're walking through this little trench that's just basically the width of your foot. And there's a bunch of little rocks that are unstable there. And it's kind of like you're walking a tightrope with a big, heavy backpack on. I completely understand like why you wouldn't want to walk through that all the time, right? What would you say would be your advice for people in that kind of situation that want to walk on the flat?
I think each area has its the way that you want to do things. Like for the winds, if you're up on that high altitude level, then there's a lot of gravel. There's a lot of already rocks. So it's a lot easier in places like that to spread out. I remember Adam, one of our NOLS instructors, he took us bushwhacking up the side of a mountain. We didn't follow any trail, but what he told us was, if we're following in line, then we're going to, stomp down the ground. So we need to make sure that we spread out our impact. So that way we're not, solid file line walking and, stepping on the same things. So if you are, with a big group, or if you're going to be somewhere, where there is that micro level as far as diversity of plant life, make sure you're not stepping on that. But boulder fields are really good to walk on. I try to tell the kids, walk on anything solid. Don't try to walk on wildflowers is the biggest thing. California last year, I think it was, they had I know social media blew it up, but there was the wildflowers in California, and a lot of people rushed to go see them. And when they did, people just walked through the fields. And because of that, you could just see where trails were built. User trails is what I call them. And those user trails are no good. For me in the upstate South Carolina region, there's an area called Panther Town. And Panther Town is a lot of user-made trails. And unfortunately, people get lost up there too easily because people just made their own trails. And you know, you try to bushwhack and you try to, you know, cut down on as much, you know, inline hiking as you can. But you also have to make sure that one area on the Appalachian Trail near Overlook Mountain in Tennessee, there was something like, I want to say 12 different campfire pits that I saw out there. And it's like, there was one really, really big one. And then there were like 11 scattered around it. And I'm like, why can't all these people just enjoy a campfire together? Why does one small campfire pit have to be only 10 feet away from the big one? And that was only just because people are afraid to get to know each other. You know, if you're going to be out in the woods and you're camping and the person has their tent set up, it's kind of like you don't want to go over there and be like, you know, introduce yourself. And I think that's something that we have to get over. You know, of course there's scary people in the woods, sure, but use your best, you know, knowledge. Don't build 11 campfire pits. It's ridiculous.
No, I agree. But that said, you know, I have that same instinct sometimes when there's other folks. It feels like you're creepy when you're gonna go introduce yourself and somebody's like in their dark tent, or you're in the dark going to their lit up tent. You know,
Right.
You're coming out of the shadows of the woods and you're like, oh, I would be like a creep. You know?
Yeah.
Like what's your not your pickup line, but you know, what's your pickup line to say hello to a new hiker, you know?
If I meet a new hiker, I start off at a distance saying hello. I don't walk right up to them, you know, not saying anything. I try to be about 10 feet, 15 feet away, and I'll be like, you know, just say something about the trail I was on that day. And that, you know, goes as well into respecting others. If you're out there and, you know, you show up to an area and you want to be friendly to somebody, don't just like walk up to them all silent and like spooky and stare at them and be like, hey.
That's how I do it. I've been very successful camping alone.
Yeah, I guess like if I see a group of college students or anything like that, I'll be like, you know, just be over at my campsite setting up my tent, and I'll be like, nice tent, or you know, like, what you got in the backpack, or you know, but I'll be far enough away from them that like the conversation, you can tell, isn't me trying to like be as close up to them as possible and be like, hey, how are you?
Y'all pitching a tent over there?
Y'all pitching a tent? Scratching my belly. Oh yeah.
Yeah, you pitched that tent.
Right.
Well, all right. So that's cool. So getting back to the step of travel and camp on durable surfaces. Yeah. So that's something that most people don't know about is if there's a established trail, do try to stay in line, try to stay on that trail, try not to walk in line. But if you're going off trail, which often does happen because you got to get to a different objective and you're just exploring some wilderness area. If there's vegetation, the best thing is to not walk in that single file line, is to spread out and just everyone walks wherever, you know, seems to not impact as much as they can. And I guess like a perfect example of this, and one that most people would not be aware of, is going through those deserts of Utah, the black crust. Remember that? So it's basically, I think they call it soil crust. I forget if was there a better term for that? Do you recall like the?
Yeah, I can't think of the name of it right now. I'm sure it'll come back to me.
Was it like crypto soil?
Cryptosporidium. No, that's the name of a waterborne illness.
Yeah. Anyway, so like we'll call it this soil crust. It's most of it's hundreds of years old, some even thousands. And you know, to the I guess the unknown hiker, it just looks like a black crust on the sand, right? So it's a little hardened, and it's kind of cool because it looks bumpy and like, I don't know, it kind of looks like its own growth. Well, that growth consists of so many things like fungi, algae, lichen, and mosses. And I forget what, like basically the bacteria that's in there, I think it's called like cyanobacteria, or blue and green algae, they also call it. And it's one of the oldest life forms on Earth, at least known to man. So when you're stepping on that, it takes, sometimes it will never grow again, but it'll take hundreds of years to regrow. And I was doing a little research on this myself. And when you look at this, again, this soil crust under the microscope, it's all these like tiny little worm-like
think it was like cryptobiotic soil. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
Right.
But anyway, all these like worm-like little ligaments, that's what really holds all the nutrients for the soil, and everything sticks to that like a sponge. And I guess what happens is these fungi, algae, and everything, it sticks to that and becomes like an apartment complex for the moss, the algae, and they just stay in there like tenants.
Yeah.
So when you step on that, you're destroying that shelter for them. And I guess the real benefit of this for the desert, which is such a dry land, right, is because of those worm-like things that are built within that, it absorbs all the water when it rains like a sponge, and it holds it for a long time. So the cacti and everything and the larger plants that you can see, they're depending on that to survive over the long term. And again, going back to the step of travel and camp on durable surfaces. So when you're traveling on this, that was one where we were often off a trail, sometimes for navigation, but we were actually walking in a single file, because if we were going to spread out, everyone was going to destroy on a wider surface. So instead, we were trying to step exactly where the last person steps. So you got to kind of know a little bit, what you may or may not be impacting, and a lot of times that comes from research or step one, right?
I'll also say that if you're camping in an area, a biggest camping, boating, skiing, climbing, make sure that you're not bringing in anything with you from like your area. So like, don't travel with firewood, just get the firewood from where you're at, and not try to bring anything in with you. I know that like places like New Mexico where there's white nose bat disease, it's because people don't check their sneakers. They bring in bacteria and microorganisms that really affect an area like caves where, bats habitat, or you're bringing in a beetle species from the firewood that you brought from, your home state out to somewhere else, or you bring your boat to Florida from a lake, and it's like, you don't realize what might be sitting, on the bottom of your boats, that carry with you to places. So,
but that said, are you saying that folks should like scrub their boots before, like if their last hike was in the desert and they're going to the Appalachian area, they gotta like scrub their shoes or wash them?
It depends on how quickly you move. Like, I don't necessarily wash my boots right after a hike. I think that if I leave them in the UV light, that does a pretty good job of killing any organisms. And after a long hike, I'm typically in the same areas. But if I am traveling from Colorado on a road trip and I go up to Michigan or something like that, I will try to knock off my shoes. And that's even before I get in the car, just because I don't like to make my car dirty. Yeah. So there's reasonable applications for doing this, but then there's also the whole idea that like, just depending on where you're going. I know on the PCT in Northern California, there are sections where they ask you to scrub your boots before you go. And there's definitely areas by the trailhead where there's like a little foot scraper, or there used to be.
Oh yeah.
Where you scrub the bottom of your shoes. And, they had a lot of problem with, invasive species coming in from that.
Oh, that's cool. All right. So note to self, you may have learned that from this podcast. If you see the little boot scraper, why not use it just in case? Who knows? Just scrape. It's easy. Kind of feels nice. It's like a massage for your boot, and then you get on your hike. Here's a little story about like not introducing anything wild or All right, here's my story. I'm in Rumney, New Hampshire, right? I just finished the NOLS course, and I'm climbing with one of my best friends at the local crag. So yeah, it's Rumney Rocks, and he's just eating an apple, right? And he finishes his apple core and he chucks it. And my LNT-ness got all upset. I was like, come on, man. I was like, dude, can we not be throwing like our apple cores? And he goes like, why? And I go, well, just, you're introducing like something unnatural like into the environment. He goes, dude, there's like an apple tree like 100 yards down the frickin' gully here. do you like, what's the difference? What's the difference between like this apple core like that I just ate versus the apples that just fell? And I think it's like, it was like more or less the same apples that could grow in New Hampshire. And I was like, all right, touche. I don't know what to say in response to this, you know?
Right.
What would you say to this? Is it good? Is it bad? Did he make a point?
You know, like, I don't, Katie, my girlfriend, gets on me all the time about this because I'll also, not all the time, but some days I will, you know, leave an apple core behind. I don't leave orange peels behind. I don't leave banana peels behind. Apples seem to be that one thing that like I might leave behind. But I remember specifically going into places like Zion and Yosemite and, you know, just high impact areas where more than 1 million visitors a year come out to. And no kidding, like the chipmunks were sitting right beside me at Yosemite, like right here at my face, ready to like steal my food. And I remember in Zion, I even had to kick a fat chipmunk out of my way on the trail. That was no good for the animals, no good for me either. Like a real fat chipmunk. I kid you not, that chipmunk was like that big. Kicked him out of my way because he would not move. And I'm sure that chipmunk probably also has diabetes or something. Like, that's not funny, but it's also like, that's the world we live in. And you think about like Yellowstone. I remember seeing ravens fighting for leftover pizza crust that was out on the trail. And I'm like, this isn't normal. And so like, you know, one apple peel or one apple core in an area where there's an apple tree, I get it. Like that's not much different, but also like if you throw an apple core where there isn't an apple tree, then you got to think about like in places like Pennsylvania or, you know, North Carolina or Virginia or Texas or anything like that. It's like animals get used to that. You know, and animals forget how to feed themselves if they've got other ways of. It's kind of like us. We'll forget how to hunt one day because we'll have everything we need processed, or we'll forget how to gather food because, I mean, it's already happening. We're kind of developing this amnesia where we aren't sure how to gather things anymore. We understand logos more than we understand trees, and it's like that's the same effect for animals. I believe if we keep feeding them and they keep learning that humans, they grow a dependency on us, then they'll forget how to be animals. And they also will endanger us because kids in Yosemite, there was one kid in 2012 or 13, the bubonic plague. A chipmunk passes on bubonic plague. They have, you know, diseases still carried on them. A kid seriously got the plague from a rodent in that area. So you don't think of these things being, you know, harmful in that way, but they can be. Squirrels, birds, gray jays in Colorado, they all carry, you know, diseases on them that, you know, sure, it's nice to get a picture with them, but like realize what you're doing.
Yeah. And then you get squirrel vid.
Yeah. Then you get
2021.
How about it?
Yeah. I said squirrel vid, like COVID, but for squirrels into 2021. So yeah.
Squirrels taking over.
All right, let's move on to step number 3. So again, I'll reiterate. Step 1, plan ahead and prepare. Yeah. Step 2, travel and camp on durable surfaces. And step 3, dispose of waste properly. So yeah, Chewy's doing the 3-handed scoop to simulate
Paul
pooping in a hole.
Schaefer. That's the guy that David Letterman's co-host.
Yes.
Paul Schaefer, the bald-headed guy.
I hate him so much. He's Canadian. I hate him.
What up, Paul?
Paul Schaefer. He watches this every day, every episode. He writes in. I don't respond. I don't like him.
Well, I think David Letterman's retired anyway, right?
David Letterman wants to get on my show too, and I tell him no. David, I have more important guests to have on right now. Okay.
Yeah.
And I know you've interviewed Obama. I've seen your resume. I don't care. It's just not what I'm looking for, and I'm not entertained. All right. Dispose of waste properly. So yeah, that was one thing I kind of learned in NOLS. I knew you had to poop in a hole, but I didn't know how deep it was. So what is it? 12 inches about that they shoot for? 10?
At least 6 inches.
Oh, okay. Okay. At least 6 inches. Make it a little wider so you can poop in there. And then last time we had Archie on the podcast, we talked about the poop soup. So sometimes I don't know. Tell me what you think about the poop soup. I know at my school. Yeah, I know at my school in outdoor education, they were saying like, yeah, once your poop hardens, it becomes like cement and it takes a long time to actually blend in with the soil. So you want to poop soup it, even add a little water and mix it up. But NOLS, I recall not really preaching that. What do you know about it?
I definitely try to dig it 6 inches at least. One thing that my kids don't realize, and adults for that matter too, if you have to poop and it's an emergency and you can't dig your hole fast enough, just poop on the ground and then dig your hole, and then find a stick and play hockey with it and like knock the turd into the hole. Like, just because you have to poop on the ground first doesn't mean that you can't dig a hole afterwards. And don't use your trowel to make contact with the poop, because you're going to use that trowel or whatever you dig a hole with again. And so a lot of kids don't understand that when they see a trowel, they think, oh God, this thing is covered in poop, I can't use it at all. As long as you're using it effectively, the only thing that it ever touches is clean dirt. You don't use your trowel to, re-scoop the dirt into the hole. You just dig a hole and then you put the trowel off to the side and then you poop in your hole. Or you grab a stick and you knock the poop in there. But yeah, we never really, it makes sense that you would do a poop soup just so that way it helps to break down like everything faster. But no, yeah, they didn't really, I just remember covering the whole idea of like burying your poop and trying to hike your toilet paper out with you.
Yeah, well, let's talk about toilet paper. That's one thing I learned about in NOLS is first of all, I think they kind of look down on you, even in the first section. If you were considering bringing toilet paper out there, they're like, come on. And I'd say now as an outdoorsman too, I kind of look at that as an amateur move to bring toilet paper out in the wilderness. If you do use it, you probably should pack it out unless it's some kind of really proven decomposing thing. But one thing, again, I learned in NOLS is what's called the backcountry bidet, right? And I just did a trip out for like a little shoot with a little short film I'm working on in the Wind River Range with my business partner, Cody. And yeah, I taught him how to do this. So basically, like Chewy just explained, you dig your hole, get everything ready. You have a Nalgene, so usually a good full Nalgene, which is a liter, set up. You have a little bottle of soap, usually a good decomposing soap. What's the typical camping soap again called? Do you know? Brown's? Is it Brown's?
Dr. Bronner's.
Yeah, Bronner's. So a little Dr. Bronner's, you have that open, right? And now what you're doing is you squat down, you do your business, and you pour a little water, like basically you put your hand behind your butt in between your legs, you pour a little water in there, and you start wiping your butt straight up with your hand. And kind of like what they say they do in India, right? So you're using your hand to wipe your butt. And at first it feels really weird because you're feeling your butthole and you're like, what am I doing? This is not what I'm supposed to be doing in life. And then very soon after, I really recommend trying it. And that's what they said. No, we recommend you try it. And everyone that tries it never comes back afterwards because they're like, oh, game changer. Like, it's so good that you consider doing it in your own home. You're like, dude, I hate toilet paper. I hate the feeling of toilet paper on my butt now. It's like sandpaper. Versus the backcountry bidet, which is just nice water, and it really feels like you're giving yourself a much needed shower in the outdoors.
And you're condensing your waste too. You just stop using toilet paper anymore. So there's something else you don't have to use.
Yeah. So again, you're pouring water in there, and then you just use your left hand for basically everything that's dirty. Never use your right hand. You're manipulating the water bottle with your right hand, pouring it into your poopy left hand, wiping your butthole, and then once you're done, you feel it's all nice and clean, which it will be. You keep rinsing your hand, get most of the poop off, and then you grab with your right hand again the soap, put it in that poopy hand, and you can, if you're watching on YouTube, you can just wash everything in your hand using your left hand, your thumb. You're basically just cleaning in between your fingers, on your palm. It takes manipulation, especially if you have a broken thumb like me, which you can see on YouTube. It's pretty gross. But yeah, so basically, yeah, so you're never really using your right hand to make contact with any kind of poop. And then you finish and you bury your poop and make a poop soup if you want to do that or whatever. And yeah, so that's one thing I learned in NOLS. So backcountry bidet, it's brand new, it's improved. Check it out. It's in store now.
Flying off the
Anything?
shelf.
Yeah. Anything? Yeah, it's flying. Yeah. Get it before it goes.
I'd say for as far as poop goes, if you have kids that you're taking out in the woods with you, a great way to understand if they're like having normal bowel movements or if they're feel sick or anything like that is when they come back from the bathroom, ask them to put their poop in a movie title. So like we had one kid that was struggling and we wanted to find out more about like what kind of issues he was having. So he was like, yeah, that one was called The Green Mile. And it was kind of like, oh, okay, you got some cramps going on. We got to help you out with. Or like you have kids that will call it the clumps or something like that. It's kind of like you get an idea because like if you have clumpy poop, then you know you're not drinking enough water. If it's too oily or too stooly, then you have some kind of like internal issues sometimes. So if you have groups, it might just be a fun way to like break a barrier as well, where like you're having this normal conversation. It's a little bit fun because you have to get creative with movie titles and like we just think of it as like proper hygiene. You're taking care of yourself. So that's just a little mind trick to help you to like, when you do first aid, you often ask people, last intakes and outtakes, was your bowel movement normal? Is that normal for you? So it's like, that's just an easy way to use psychology.
If they label it Legends of the Fall, you're in trouble.
See, it's so good. You can go on for a long time with it.
Yeah. Cool. Just finishing up on the pooping. You want to do it. What is it in as far as like yards away from a water source? Chewy?
Oh yeah. Not just for packing in and out your stuff, but waterways too. This can go for washing dishes as far as trails, but don't just wash your dishes and all that other stuff in the rivers, because even though that biodegradable soap says that it's biodegradable, it's still not natural to the microorganisms and the fish and the reptiles that live in those creeks and rivers. So what you think about as far as your water going downstream, that water can carry for many, 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 many miles. And so it's important that if you do have to poop, pee, wash yourself or wash your dishes, think about carrying a little wash bucket, fill your wash bucket up, and then carry that back to the campsite with you. Do it at least 250 feet away from any sources, because if you hike and camp near a creek, that rain could come next week and swell the entire river up. And then where you pooped at, that was closer than 250 feet. Well, guess what? Now that poop might be swept up and carried downriver. So it's important that, you plan ahead and think about, just the environment after you leave it. Because it snows, wind happens, rain happens, and you don't think about your impact after you leave so much. But, the campsite can get contaminated if you're too close. And wag bags, that was something that we used at Red Rocks that I had those were lifesavers. I still have a couple from the Red Rocks because I grabbed 15 one day and I was like, these are lifesavers when I need them. But they have like this deodorizer effect in them. So like if you carry a wag bag, it's basically like a human poop bag. It's got a deodorizer in there. You poop in the bag, or you poop and then you scoop the poop into the bag. You zip it up, tie it, but it's got a deodorizer so you don't have to smell it. You don't have to deal with it. Just put it in a Ziploc bag and then just carry it out. But places like Red Rocks require it because it's such a climbing mecca. And even this summer, I took canoe trips out on the river, and we were going to be reusing the same site. You can't poop in the same area that you're using for different camping groups to come in, because somebody's going to eventually camp on top of poop. So if you carry wag bags, then that's just another way that you don't have to dig holes quite so much.
Yep. So 250 yards from water, pack it in and out if you can. And gray water, be conscious of that. We'll talk about a little bit about camping specifically as for where you should set up your camp and like kind of the triangle of camping, if you will, and kitchen and whatnot. But let's move on. Let's move on from the poop section. So that was dispose of waste properly. Step 3. Sweet. Step 4, leave what you find. So Chewy's doing the falling leaf right now. So step 4, leave what you find. All right. What do you got?
Leave what you find. Take pictures, kill nothing but time, and leave nothing but footprints. I think that's basically how they summarize that. The wildflowers that you find, leave them behind. Let others give others a chance to enjoy it. I'm guilty of taking rocks because occasionally I'll have a really good day of whatever it is I'm doing outside, and I like to, remember my experience outdoors. And so there are rocks that I'll pick up after a good day, and I'll be like, I'll remember this weekend because of this rock right here. And so I'm guilty of taking stuff with me occasionally, but I don't take things like artifacts. I might take one rock with me, not 5 or 6 or 50 or anything like that. But
I always hike with folks that want to bring back rocks, and they're sometimes it's my mom. She's like, "Can you carry this for me?" And she gives me this massive rock. I'm like, No, pick a smaller rock if you're going to do this. Like, I'm not carrying this out.
Don't carry big boulders with you.
Yeah. But it's so pretty. It's so pretty. I don't care.
I use it as a doorstop when I get home.
Yeah.
Leave what you find is kind of like, I try to make sure that the kids understand, don't pick up the bamboo and swing it around. Don't pick up the rocks and throw it just because you're bored in the woods and you want to toss something. If you're intentional about your ideas of what you want to do out in the woods, then it's a lot easier to control the things around you. So
Gotcha.
As far as leave what you find, it's that simple. Take nothing but pictures, kill nothing but time, and leave nothing but footprints. Otherwise, you might have ghosts that come back with you, depending on what you brought back with you.
What are your thoughts on the whole arrowhead debate? You can't. You see a beautiful arrowhead, you can't pick it up. You got to leave it. What's your thoughts on that?
Never really found an arrowhead.
Me neither.
I found chart, and I did take some of that back with me from Utah. But as far as arrowheads, I think I would at least get in touch with the museum or the natural historical society around me, wherever I am.
Yeah, I think you're supposed to. I think that's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to contact whatever wildlife or whatever park management is in your area and tell them.
Yeah.
I think that's technically, I think you're technically legally supposed to do that. I mean, that's not enforceable, of course, but you're technically supposed to do that. And I think somebody told us a story of picking up an arrowhead in NOLS where, I think he started having bad luck, and he truly believed that he was having bad luck because of the arrowhead. But not just that, but I guess it had something to do with the natives and a family or something. And I don't know. He literally took a plane back, and hiked way back in the backcountry and put it back where he found it. It was insane. Yeah. I forget the story. It was kind of haunting, but it was kind of cool to hear. There
was something about he had a spirit in his house or something like that, and after that, or something about a door opening up and closing, and he had nothing.
Something weird.
Yeah. It was definitely a spooky story.
And as far as leave what you find, that doesn't mean leave things that you build. So if you're building don't build a structure if possible, a wood structure, just for fun. Try to really minimize, don't build wood furniture out there and just leave it. One thing in NOLS, we did that whole winter camping. You build these, what do we call them? The
quigloos.
Quigloos, yeah. So it's basically an igloo. You build the snow, that the whole camp. What is it, 20 something or 20 somewhat people? One person in the middle. Everyone just, I'll throw video on YouTube, but everyone's throwing snow into this massive mound, and one person's on top just packing it down, and then eventually you dig in. And it's ours was beautiful. You could sleep 3 people in it, or 4, or whatever, however many you were. And it's really cozy in there. But that said, that's one thing that we definitely broke down when we left, because, it looked like a society. It looked like we built a little village out there. We had a kitchen, and we had these things. And I guess one of the other risks they were talking about is if snowmobiles come by and a whiteout, they're going to run into these things like brick houses. So, yeah.
That's you make a good point. Making sure that if you leave a site, If it is a site that you aren't supposed to be like it's not an established campsite, make sure to not leave your fire pits or like your wood behind or anything, because people will see that and be like, oh, cool, this is a new campsite. Or they'll run into it and hurt themselves or something like that, like you're saying.
Which is a great transition into step number 5, minimize campfire impacts. Chewy's doing the 5-finger flame here. So, all right, what do we got?
Campfires, hot topic. Now you see what I did there, right? Wildfires happening abundantly in places, right? California, West Coast, all over the place. And it's not only because of campfires, but it's also a lack of our involvement with trimming down nature, as far as like we have a mixed up relationship with nature, and that people want to leave it alone and let nature do its thing. And then there's other people that want to step in and govern it. And somewhere in the middle we have to be, but we can't let nature be by itself, because if we do, then it adds up fuel that eventually burns. So you have places like California where they don't do a whole lot of wood clearing. And in places like, even Linville Gorge in North Carolina, for example, pure wilderness areas where they just let nature do its thing. And we're finding out that if we don't interact with nature, then we do have a buildup of trees that get stacked on top of each other. And those are just dead fuel cells. That will eventually be a spark with a tree that's dead and down. Lightning will strike it, and then it's going to spread like wildfire next to the next one. So you have experimental forests which try to clean up the nature down on the bottom shelf, so that way fires can't jump up. A lot of the times fires will jump from tree to tree to tree through higher levels of burning items. So you have your forest floor, you have your wood on top of it, you have more wood stacked up. But then you also have people that just throw out their cigarette butts, that start wildfires on the side of interstates. You have lightning strikes, wildfires. I know in South Carolina, I was on top of Sassafras Mountain, which is the tallest peak in South Carolina. And it was a very windy day. And these two guys just got up and left their camp. And they had a fire that wasn't put out. And on top of this exposed high point in South Carolina, any of those embers from the top of that mountain could have gone a mile in either direction. And in fact, not on that camping trip that I was on, but in the year after I was out there, there was a hospital. It's called Hospital Fire, or Party Rock, or Hospital Fire. I can't remember. But in South Carolina, they had a big wildfire that probably happened the same way, where somebody built a campfire and embers flew off from the camp and then got sparked a mile down, in a gully. So you never know exactly where your campfires are going to land, as far as if you don't take care of them. Those two guys left, and I had to go over, and with my 2 Nalgene instead of water that I had to douse out their fire. And
that sucks. So you've been carrying this water for yourself.
Yeah. This was water I was going to make and brush my teeth with and cook my oatmeal with and this and that. And
did you scold them, or?
I just looked at them like, I can't believe you guys. But they were also going down. They were going the same way that I was eventually headed to. But I knew that if I ran into them again, that I would lose my mind with them. And that's another thing about being advocates for L&T, is that we can't be the bad guys. We can't be the ones that say, oh, that guy left me thinking that L&T people were such dicks, or anything like that. That's a great line that we have to.
That raises a great question, which I was saving for the end, but I'll ask now. How do you communicate when you witness an L&T violation, if you will, something that you feel the need that you should try to educate them without being one of these, like, again, Boy Scouts that's nosy? What's your What's your methodology? What's your approach? What kind of words do you use to broach those issues?
I like to go with the approach that right now, if the conflict existed, I don't want to face off with you. Like you, in this case, imagine me and you being face to face.
Yeah.
We're looking at each other. Instead of looking at each other, I want to turn sideways and look at what really we're talking about. So instead of approaching the person being in a standoff, stand beside them and look at the resource instead. So that way it's not this attack on a person's character. And that's what a lot of people are afraid of, is that when they're doing something wrong, they think they're being punished, or they don't want to be punished, or they think that they're being, like spoken down to. Instead, what I like to think of is, if I'm with those two that are camping, I'll stand beside them and I'll look at the fire with them and I'll say, "That's a nice fire you got going." And they'll be like, "Yeah." And I'll be like, you have to make sure that we put that out. I'm sure you guys noticed the wind that we're having today, right? And I just try to call upon the things that happen around us. If you have a dog that's off of a leash, instead of talking down to the person about their dog, tell them, "Oh, I love your dog. He looks very beautiful. He's a good looking animal." And then talk about, "Hey, we have deer that it's rutting season right now. I'd hate for your dog to get, to run off without you." So you try to call upon the things that are happening around you rather than, say, "Vince, you suck, man. Put your dog on a freaking leash. Like, I can't believe you're doing this."
Let's role play right now. Let's role play. All right. I'm Vince, and I'm cleaning my dishes in the lake because it's just way more convenient. Like, I have access to infinite water instead of hiking like 250 yards to clean my pot of whatever that I was trying to, because I just cooked. So, all right. So here I am scrubbing my thing over the fish in the lake.
Oh boy.
Scrub.
And we had to do this too in the canyon section. We did some role playing like this for L&T.
Oh, I forgot. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, we did. We did. Okay. All right. So I don't know you. Hey, man. How are you?
Hey, how's it going? Beautiful day.
It is. Yeah. What y'all guys make?
Oh, I made some fish. Yeah, there's so many fish in this lake. It's awesome.
Oh, you cook some up? Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Just cleaning it up and packing up. Last day.
All right, getting out?
Yeah, getting out.
All right, I guess we're both going the same way. Hey, I just want to let you know, cleaning in the river, not such a good thing. I just want you to be aware that I've got a portable wash sink if you want it. I'll let you borrow it. But the reason we try not to wash our stuff in the rivers, even though that's biodegradable and that's really cool that you're using it, there's still microorganisms in fish that's toxic to. I just want you to be aware that fish that you're eating last night, what if it had like soap in it?
Oh, yeah. I guess I didn't really know. Yeah, sorry. That's probably the average response. But how about this response? Yeah, but I've been told by people like this is fine to use. Do you work? Are you a park ranger or something? Or
not a park ranger. I do work in outdoor education.
I gotcha. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's just a nice little thing that I try to pass along to others.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be nosy or anything. I just hopefully that this information that you get, you can pass along to others as well.
All right. Yeah. Well, thanks. Yeah. I'll try to be careful next time. That's probably how I would handle. I wanted to be more dramatic, but that would just not appear. Like, who the fuck are you?
there are definitely people like that. Like people that will definitely be like, what are you doing telling me this stuff?
Yeah.
And I can't change everybody's mind. I don't anticipate to change people's minds, but if I can at least tell them and get on my soapbox for a minute, then I feel better leaving the woods myself.
Yeah, that's good.
And there's different ways that you can approach it, but if you use the resources and you don't attack the person and just try to like give them more information about what they're doing and how they're effective, seems to be okay.
I've come to go with the approach, and I don't know if you could critique me if it's right or wrong, but I kind of go with the approach of, I actually just found out recently that You know,
That's a
I
good
go
one.
with the fact that like, oh yeah, I used to do that all the time. And somebody like, I just got educated recently that like, we're not supposed to or whatever, teach their own. But
Yeah.
yeah, I started switching it up and trying to do it this way now just because
but-
of this reason.
Yeah. And I think that it's all just about our personalities. You know, some of us are definitely more outspoken in that sense, but we also have to make sure that if we are outspoken, that we're not, you know, giving these people a bad taste of like LNT, because we want them to become advocates. We want them to like be more responsible and like be role models the same way that like our NOLS instructors were role models to us, that sort of thing.
Let's get back to it. So we were still on step 5, minimize campfire impacts. So again, the flame. Now, one thing I did see in like the kind of the checkpoints of that is like a campfire pan. Do you ever carry that? That sounds so obnoxious to carry. It's such a heavy object. Like what, you make a fire through on a pan? Like, what's your thoughts on this?
Not unless I'm base camping somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And even then with base camps, there's an established campfire ring.
Yeah.
I've never done a fire pit. No, I take that back. I did a fire pit in a pan at a state park in South Carolina where it was, you know, I guess in an area where like you have a lot of grass.
Yeah.
And you don't want to burn the grass. I understand a fire pan, but even then,
you're still melt it.
Yeah. You're still going to like the heat from the pan is going to like radiate down on the ground. So I have a buddy that every time he goes camping, he's like, camping has to have a fire. I'm not camping unless there's a fire. And
I kind of agree.
It's nice. It's definitely like a primitive TV, you know, but I just remember one trip in particular. I didn't know that there were synchronized fireflies happening around us. We were on the Congaree River in South Carolina, and I stepped away from the campfire. And when I did, across the riverbank from us were fireflies all sinking together in the trees. And I was like, are you guys seeing this? And all of them looked up from the campfire and like, we're like, whoa, this is really special. So campfires are nice, but also like, and it's a great way to get kids warmed up and to like give them an activity and to like teach them those skills. I'm not trying to diss campfires. I love campfires, but make sure that you need it. If you're going to get at a campsite at 7 p.m. and you're already tired, you know, don't try to hurt yourself building one. You know, and don't build 11 when you have a big one. You know, go make friends. Go up to that big campfire and, you know, enjoy being out in the woods with people and, you know, share the bottle of whiskey or something that you have. Or
I don't know if I've shared this story with you before, but I was camping in 𝐴𝐷𝐻, which is in Wyoming there. Great rock climbing, like off with place of these big cracks and you stick your body in it and it's just atrocious, but it's a really cute camping area. It's all dispersed camping and you're just surrounded by that Wyoming, you know, bushy landscape, but with these nice little playground rocks. Like it looks so fun. And it's just wild and it's beautiful. And I was transitioning, I think, to NOLS or back from NOLS or something. I made a fire, stayed there the night for camping, and I made a fire and I had my guitar, just playing some guitar music. And like all of a sudden, as the flame got bigger, just a swath of moth just start dive bombing like kamikaze into this fire. It's just like so many moths were dying by the hundreds. And I was just like, started playing like sad music. And I was like, I hurt myself today.
Well, meanwhile, the fire got bigger and bigger because all these moth bodies.
I started putting sand on it and I was like, oh no. But it was also like, I guess the sadistic person in me was like, that's kind of beautiful in a horrific and sad way.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So campfires, minimizing that, as well as when you're making them. I think one of the things that people don't always remember is they try to get dry sticks off of a tree and they're breaking branches off. That's something you really want to try to avoid. Just use whatever's dead and on the ground without, you know, derooting it or anything.
Dead, down, and dinky. That's the 3 Ds.
So definitely try to get whatever's down there. So cool. Anything else for the fire?
Dead, down, and dinky. Make sure that it's down off the ground. Make sure that's dead and not alive. And then until you have a big enough fire, don't go with anything like bigger than your waist. Like try to go with something that's about your width of your arm.
Sweet.
That's dinky enough. And I mean, to start fires, you really only need, the problem that I've run into with kids and adults trying to start fires is that they'll add too much to start off with. A fire really needs oxygen. It needs to breathe. And if you put too much on there to start with, then it's going to always die. So if you just start with the little small things, the tinder and the kindling to start off with, then you're going to build your fire up and it's going to be a lot better.
Dude, I pride myself on being like, I'd say that's one of my few and only good skills in life is starting a fire, even in the harshest and wettest conditions.
Yeah.
I'd say I'm the most OCD when it comes to making a fire because I'm usually very successful at it. And yeah, I could make a whole podcast on just how to make a little fire or bonfire. But I guess I could summarize it and it's just saying like preparation is key as far as before you ever start to try to light a match or your lighter or whatever you're using. Really have everything prepared. Like you said, people always go with too big of things. I'll be like, I'll ask people, to contribute and be like, can you get me really small tinder? Like, I'm talking like hair, like bristle type stuff, like dead grass or something like that. Very, very small microscopic things. And they come back with like twigs, size of my pinky. And I'm like, oh, God damn it. Can't just light this. Like, so yeah, preparation is key and really building up the levels of the bigger stuff eventually. But the bigger stuff really is last. Like once the thing is going, you can go get some bigger stuff. Even
like the hot coals that we use, those coals can stay warm like way after you're gone from your campsite. So you have to, those hot coals, you have to make sure you bury them.
Yep.
Because like there've been plenty of times where the fire died out and I put water on it, but the next morning I'm able to restart it easy because the coals are still kind of warm on the bottom. So you have to make sure when you leave it, you put it all the way out.
Yep. All right. Step 6, respect wildlife. So Chewy's now doing the number 6 with his hands behind his head as antlers. And yeah, so the measuring device of your thumb. So you extend your arm, look at your thumb, and if the wildlife is bigger than your thumb, you're probably too close. You're hindering that wildlife's bubble. It's COVID time, they carry the COVID. You want to give it its space. So yeah, what do we got to cover respect wildlife, Chewy?
When I teach first aid, my reptiles and amphibians and snake class is really short because we all know that key thing to remember is red on yellow, don't touch snakes. Yep.
Red on yellow, yellow on red. Just don't touch the snake.
just don't.
Dude, wait, hold on. Before you move on from that, I do have a story. I was in Florida and I thought that's exactly what happened. I thought I knew exactly what it was. I was like, oh, it's red on yellow. What's the saying though? What's the actual saying? Like,
what it really is red on black, friend of Jack, red on yellow, kill a fellow.
Yeah, well, I messed that up. So I literally have a picture of me as a kid, like, young teen with a coral snake, just taking a selfie. And then I got back. I was like, wait, is it red on black? And I looked and yeah, no, it was the other one. It was the poisonous one. I was like, oh, I did get bit, but I grabbed the wrong snake. So yeah. Continue. I'm sorry.
Respect wildlife. We already talked about, the fat chipmunks, fat raccoons. There's Katie used to work at a wilderness therapy called Trails Carolina, and the backcountry sites that are constantly reused by the groups that come in and out. They have a resident raccoon named Chunky Dan. Chunky Dan has figured out the way to take down bear hangs. Like, no kidding. He'll climb up trees and like scurry down the rope and like open up your bag. So one morning they woke up and the trash is just everywhere and the kids are like, Chunky Dan's been here. So animals are smart, man. Make sure that they don't catch on to you, because then you also have like, if you attract the small animals, then you're going to eventually get the bigger ones. So think about living in places where mountain lions exist or bears or snakes. My mom, for example, she lives on a lake, and I asked her not to remove the snake that she had on her property. It was a water band snake. They look very similar to copperheads, but they have a flat head and their stripes are bigger. They're wider. So it wasn't a copperhead, but it looks eerily similar. And I asked her, I was like, please don't let me relocate this animal. Please don't get your gun and shoot it. Just let him be. And she was afraid of her koi fish, which I understand. But shortly after removing that water band snake, that harmless snake to humans anyway, shortly after that, a copperhead moved in. So depending on the area that you're, trying to be a hero or whatever, you don't know what other animal you're inviting in to, so even if you are trying to, feed the raccoons, or if you're trying to feed the wildlife and you're trying to get that Instagram video of, oh, isn't this precious animal in my backyard? Coyotes can come from it. Wild boar, especially like feral pigs in South Carolina, are a real big nuisance. So you never know exactly what type of animal is out there. So respect wildlife, give them their distance. You need to keep yours as well. I know that in places like Yellowstone, the tourists out there are unimaginable. We are in, the mammoth part of Yellowstone on the back half of the property. And the park rangers literally were having to get out of their car and yell at people because they don't want to respect the park rangers that were trying to tell them, get away from that elk. And like the people were still trying to feed them, not knowing that the park rangers were like the authority in that matter. And it's really just upsetting that like people think that they can do what they want and that they know better and this and that. And I'd just say that if you do want to get into animals and that sort of thing, if you do have aquatic, love for animals, coral reefs, Great Barrier Reefs, sharks, snakes, bears, go talk with your local museum first. Go talk with the local school, get in touch with that area that studies those things. If you love birds, getting with a birding group. Just because you love animals and you want to, see more of them, do it in the right way. Mm. Go ahead and invest in your clubs. They all need your money just like everybody else in America needs your money right now.
Yeah, there's definitely that dumbed down thought process nowadays where, we have all this content out there, video content, and a lot of it's wildlife. And I don't know, I guess you become disassociated when you actually go out there. I've actually been sucked into that where I'm not that intimidated by a wildlife and I don't really comprehend the risks just because, I don't know, for some reason, I think people are just dulled down by everything they see. So they don't think there's actually a risk until it happens. And then you see these, what's that big park in Wyoming? Yellowstone. Yeah. Where like guy gets attacked by bison, guy gets attacked by bear. And you're like, well, he went up to the bear or the bison 10 feet. Like you didn't think that anything would happen until it happened. Right. I'd say trying to understand that your brain has potentially been warped to not understand the threats, especially when you're not actively living in the outdoors and you're just in a park kind of area. It feels like, oh, this is just an attraction. This is like a ride. It's all controlled, but it's not, it's not controlled even in Yellowstone, even if it's right by the road.
That's a good point. I never thought about the idea that just because a national park exists, people think that like, oh, I'm entering an attraction park or anything like that. That's a good point. Never thought about that.
Yep. What are your thoughts on bear barrels? I hate them. I never used it.
I had to use them on the PCT. Never had to use them on the AT. Unfortunately now, maybe fortunately, unfortunately, however you look at it, they're starting to be required on the AT in places. Places like the Smokies gotten stupid as far as how people aren't handling themselves. There used to be the shelters on the AT that you stay in. In the Smokies, they had a fence in front of the shelters, and this fence protected you from the outside bears and whatnot. And this was something that they did in the 80s and 90s and 2000s. But what they were finding out was that people would leave food in the fence and let the animals come and, basically eat the food out of the fence because, there was that barrier. They were protected by the fence, and they would take videos and pictures of bears coming at their shelter and eating from the food that they stuck into the little wire gate fence. Park rangers caught on to the idea that like, oh, this isn't actually helping us at all. They took the fences out, and since then they've had to tell people, hey, this is on you. Like this isn't on us anymore. Like you have to be smart. And I think that's a good call. It's like you do give people the chance to go out there into the woods, but you also let them be the masters of their own destiny. in that sense. You know, it's not up to the park rangers to make everything safe in the outdoors. Yeah. It's up to you to be safe. And
I'll say this about bear barrels.
Canisters. Yeah.
They're heavy. They're bulky. Like the volume of it is really kind of a nuisance in your pack. That said, it makes things easier. Like, because believe me, if you're in a wildlife like remote area alone, you're gonna get those haunted dreams of a bear, and it's a pretty realistic risk because they're out there. So the bear barrel or canister is certainly going to help minimize that because it really secures the food and also like the smell. But that said, if you're trying to go lighter, you can go with the bear hang, but I would strongly recommend you practice that. I had practiced it as an outdoor educator, but I forgot, like I went out there trying to minimize our weight because we had 90-pound packs, like regardless. And I didn't want to bring another rope, like a strong rope for the rope or for our bear hang. So we just brought like, paracord, like survival rope. The thing is, like, that thing just cuts into the tree. You can't really pull, like you can't pull over a branch with that. And it goes to show you should practice trying to do like a 3-to-1 system, but that's complicated. It's like pulley system. Sometimes you should bring a pulley depending on how much food you're bringing out there. It's something you need to practice before you go out there. And it's, we made that mistake of going out there and it was like nighttime, setting up camp, exhausted from the hike into the Wind River. And then we're like out there and we ended up just climbing the tree. We climbed the tree on a branch that was strong enough to support our weight, hiked out, or like climbed out off of the branch and pulled this like bear bag up. And we talked about that on a previous podcast. It looked really ridiculous. It served the purpose, but again, practice. Don't bring a tiny cord, or if you do, just figure out how it works and get it to work.
I'll say this about bear canisters. I mean, they were a nuisance for sure. I definitely had to learn how to pack it into my backpack. And then like I had food that sometimes wouldn't fit all the way into it because I'd have to carry 7 or 8 days on the PCT. But there was one thru-hiker that she said bear came through her campsite at night, but she had her bear canister outside of her tent, like 100 feet away or something like that. She woke up in the morning and down the hill was the bear with the bear canister. He was sitting on his rump and he was just looking at the food like, how do I get to this thing? And so she had to wait for like 2 more hours for the bear to leave and just give up on the bear canister. And
that's awesome.
So she went down the hill and picked up her bear canister and like booked it out of there. But yeah, she had to like wait for the bear to just like basically stop and like give up after like not knowing how to open up the bear canister.
I'm literally picturing Winnie the Pooh here with like his jar of honey, except it's a jar of food.
Yeah, and he's just like,
damn it.
Yeah. I can't do
it. That's awesome. Yeah, well, before we move on to the final step number 7, let's just talk a little bit about setting up your campsite and your kitchen and what's the third part of your triangle? Is it your gray water, like your cleaning station, I guess? Right?
Kitchen, bear hang, bear food, and then camp, I think.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So basically where you're storing your food, you want at a certain distance. What's the distances? Do you know?
I think it's about 500 feet. Either 200 or 200 or 500. I can't remember exactly.
Okay. A good distance you want to set up basically in a triangle pattern. And again, everything should be about like 250 feet from any water source. But yeah, you set up your camp, right? And you don't want to be cooking by your tent because that's where you're going to sleep and you don't want the animals to come after they smelled probably where you dropped a little bit of food. So you go and you cook and eat in a separate location. However, a good distance from your tent. And then from that, in a triangle fashion, far away, you set up where you're going to keep the food overnight. So you don't keep the food where you had your kitchen per se. If possible, hang it or have your bear barrel there. And then in the morning, you go and you grab your food, bring it to the kitchen, and then so on and so forth. Yeah, sounds like a pain in the ass, but it'll make you sleep a little better when you're a little less worried about, oh, shit. It sucks when you forget, oh, I have my toothpaste in my sleeping bag, and like you're like, damn, am I gonna just take the risk on this one tonight, or am I gonna walk all the way to the bear hang, drop that thing, and put the toothpaste in? Like
that's a 30-minute process. Yeah, you have to walk over to the bear hang, untie it, drop your food bag, find which one is yours, put the damn stuff in the bag, pull it back up, tie it off, and then walk back to your tent.
Yeah.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
sucks.
And then you found your Kit Kat bar that you forgot that you had in your fucking pocket, and you're like, ah!
You find a rapper, yeah, or something. I will say that at Philmont, which is it's a big scouting reservation in Mexico, but it's also, where a lot of it's where some developed principles of L&T came from, working with scouts and that sort of thing. But there was a group that they had like just batteries in their camp. They were out for the day doing a trip, and they left their tents behind and everything like that. But a bear came through and just smelled the batteries, and that was enough for the bear to like slice their tent open and like try to go looking for anything. So
You think it was the batteries? There's no way. The batteries? What the really?
Yeah, like there's a smell on batteries that apparently attracts animals or something like that. I don't know. Yeah.
How do you know it's that and not like a remnants of something that was eaten at one point that might be on the tent,
True. Could be that. But
because I would keep my tent, like when I was doing this film shoot out there. Yeah, there's all the batteries, the camera batteries, the drone batteries, the solar panel stuff, like batteries, and the chargeable power banks. Like that was all in there.
Yeah.
God forbid I had to hang that too, because that dude, I couldn't do it. Like you couldn't. That's heavy. Like we couldn't pull that up, unless you have like a 3-to-1 pulley system or something. So interesting. Good to know though. There's a risk.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the last step. The be considerate of others. So yeah, Chewy's waving and he's giving a peace sign. So the number 7. Cool. Oh,
My bad. Ignore that.
be considerate of others, Chewy, on the podcast. God,
That's such a good intro. Good segue.
yeah. What do we got? Okay, wait. Let me say this. I recall doing my climbing course or something where we were learning the basics of climbing, and one of the things we talked about was kind of the leave no trace principle of being considerate in a climbing area. And the instructor goes, like, don't be that guy that shows up to the crag. The crag is the climbing area. Don't be that guy that shows up with like a boom box, like a dog, your hammock, weed, and yelling to the climbers while like doing a drone. And I was like in my mind, I was like, I feel like I've done all of those simultaneously once. Been belaying in a hammock while handling a drone with my dog, smoking weed. Just kidding, but like I had done a lot of those things, like playing music, yelling, and
Oh yeah.
yeah.
Being that person at the crag.
Yeah. I was like, dude, I just bring the party. I bring the party. Come on. Like, why is climbing got to be so serious? And I remember him saying that, and I was like, well, I'm still gonna occasionally play a little music. I'll ask people if it's okay to play music, but I think it's nice to have a little music on your climbing.
Right.
Yeah.
No, definitely.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like, it depends on what the hot thing is at the time. Like right now, climbing is really in the national spotlight. So you have people that are gym rats that are going outdoors, and it's like they don't understand how to leave a site, looking clean necessarily.
Yeah.
If boating is the thing that, in the next year, that's going to be the next big thing that people do, well, then you can expect a lot of sandbars to be, left behind trashy. I think respecting others also is this sort of idea where they have to be educated. I think people need to have enough respect for themselves too. Like, so if you have to like give somebody a lecture on far as like, packing out that, I'll give, for example, Max Patch in Tennessee. There was a recent magazine article about assault on Max Patch, where there was a drone picture of like 50 campsites set up on top of this beautiful bald in Tennessee, where you're able to see all around you. And people were literally leaving behind their down comforters after a weekend trip. Like, yeah, like you'll have fraternities and sororities, and you'll have company groups that go out and they'll leave behind their stuff. And that's not only just that, but like you think about endurance racers too, just leaving behind things that like they shred, during the race. And it's like, I understand that like you're trying to get out here and do these things, but have respect for yourself too. Respect for others is also this idea that like, hey, let's all be better for one another. And, this respect for others is definitely this thing, like we talked about earlier, having a conversation that isn't trying to, you're not trying to attack the person. You're just trying to help them understand that like, this is the reason why we do things this way, because we've tried it your way in the past and it didn't work like that. So that's the reason why we're doing new things. And like you're saying, like, hey, like recently I found this out, I used to do things that way as well, but here's this new thing that's being taught to others. Give it a try. But also, I've been that partier. I've been out with my college friends, and we brought the Jack Daniels with us. And there was definitely, when I was 20, 21, and I didn't know any better, one night we brought a steak with us. We hiked in a steak and we cooked it over the open fire, thinking that we were men and that we were drinking our whiskey and having our steak and, bonding as men around the campfire. And about 12 o'clock at night, deer can be so loud in the woods. And I thought that it was a bear. And so I just scream at the top of my lungs in the campground, bear, bear. And I wake up everybody in the campsite around me. And sure enough, there was a deer that comes out of the woods. And I'm like, oh, crap. So the next morning, I'm waking up and hangover. And the people at the campsite next to me who have a humor, they scream out, bear, bear, in retaliation to us. And I definitely know that they were pissed off at what I said to them because they were sleeping. And here we are showing up a group of 4, college students at 8 o'clock at night, drinking and having steaks. And then at midnight, we wake them up screaming bear. And I'm sure they didn't go back to sleep because they were paranoid about bear at that point. So that was we all learn. And so for me, like, I can't be mad at somebody that is also learning. I just have to realize that, at one point I was where they were. And it's important that we all remember that. It's important that, if we have people in our lives that don't know better, that we aren't looking down at them. We're just like, okay, you want to do this better, and I appreciate that. So here's how we can help you.
Yeah.
And so that's, to me, respecting others is one of those things that, it goes a bit beyond just being outdoors. You have to remember that, like, you are a representative for something, your community or your organization or, the clothes that you wear or anything like that. And, you have to be a role model. And if people don't see that, then they're not going to know how to really react in the woods. So I think respecting others is just, that role modeling thing.
I love it. One little question I had as far as the be considerate of others. When you're hiking, I guess from my knowledge, right, the person that's hiking uphill has the priority of, like, the right of way, if you will, versus the person going downhill. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's something that's just maybe consider it. And if that can become universal, that makes things a little easier. The person going uphill is usually in a rhythm. Sometimes they'll want to break, right? And they're just like, yeah, you go ahead. And that's fine. But usually I think it's known through the outdoor community. If you're going downhill, you let the person going uphill go by so they don't break their cadence and their rhythm. And it's just easier for them to do. Like, they're exhausted, so it's hard for them to move. Versus you, it's easy. You're just going downhill. You're kind of relaxing. So that's one of those few things that you can do and implement to make things kind of a nice symbiotic society out in the outdoors.
Well, if you're going to also, be in an area where there's bikers or horses, you got to go back to step 1, which was plan ahead. If you're going to be somewhere where there's horses and bikers and ATVs, know the sequence as far as who gets the right of way. Like you're saying, bikers will have to yield to horses, hikers yield to horses and that sort of thing. So it's like this, depending on where you're at, you have to understand the regulations and the rules behind it. And that's another way to, be considerate.
Yep. Cool. Let's run through it. So all 7, here we go. Plan ahead and prepare. Oh, yeah. So for people that want to remember, it's pass the doobie left my Rasta brother. Those are the acronyms. So, but the actual step by step: plan ahead and prepare. Travel and camp on durable surfaces. Dispose of waste properly. Leave what you find. Minimize campfire impacts. Respect wildlife. And 7, be considerate of others. That's your leave no trace practices. And we'll leave it on this final question, Chewy. What's one of the biggest mistakes, I guess, you see with like novice outdoorsmen as far as like L&T? What's like kind of your pet peeve and something that you wish you could instill in our community?
That's changed over the years. You know, when I was younger, I didn't understand how to be a good teacher. I'm still learning how to be a good teacher. So over the years, it's changed. But I think my biggest pet peeve right now is just the amount of people that get outdoors but don't give back. You know, they go out thinking that it's theirs to abuse, that they have this privilege, and it's a privilege that can be taken away. So making sure that you do sign up with your clubs and your organizations and you give them money, because I look at them these days as the real torchbearers. You think of Carolina, for me, Carolina Coalition Climbers Group, or you think about the natural historic societies, and you think about the climbing and the hiking clubs that are out there. And if they don't have your support, then, I mean, they're really the ones doing the real trail building. So you think about the Appalachian Trail Conservancy, you think about any sort of access fund.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, you know, people don't want to give their money to those things. I don't think, maybe it's changing, but too often, yeah, people just think that it's their right. You know, sure, we're Americans, and well, most of us are anyway, Vince. And not kidding. But yeah, people want to go out there, and we do have a right to being out in the woods, but that also doesn't mean that we're going around exterminating animals, you know, hunting them to extinction. You know, if you're on the trail and you want to complain about the trail sucking, you know, well, then get back out there and help to fix the trail with the club. To me, if you're a novice, and you know, just give back.
And I think that's something anybody can appreciate when they're way out there, right? And they've been following this trail for sometimes days, and then there's a bridge out there. You're like, God damn! Like, who the hell either hiked, or you know, some kind of vehicle got out there? Was it a helicopter? I don't know, but whoever built this bridge or this structure for this passage to be made viable, hats off to you. And sometimes, you know, like based on a really steep trail, right, that takes you all day to get to the summit or something, and you're like, wow, somebody not only did this hike, which is brutal, but somebody actually hiked up this log to make a stair here or something. You know, these logs to make stairs here, or they move these rocks in a specific way, these massive rocks, just so we could, you know, have a safe and easy access up, just to make it easier to hike up, right? And I think a lot of times we fall into the thing of like, oh, we think it's natural. You're like, oh, wow, it's so cool how this trail is built like so perfectly for me. Like, look at nature and its beauty, and like how somebody just hiked this, and over time people just stomped this down to make a beautiful trail. It's not how it happened. It's not how it happened. Just people that are dedicating their time, and a lot of times it's just volunteer time.
Oh yeah.
Without anything, you know, they get back by, you know, keeping their places, the places they love, accessible and non-detrimental way. So yeah, use those trails if somebody's worked so hard on them, and try to give back, because people are sacrificing a lot of exhaustion, physical exhaustion, time consumption to make this all possible for you. So, yeah. All right, Chewy. Anything else?
Till next time.
Yeah. When are you doing your? When are you trying to plan on the last part of your Triple Crown to make your 7,900 miles?
I've got work commitments, but I'm hoping that maybe the end of July. I want to go southbound. I want to start up in Banff National Park, and then make my way down through Glacier, and then hope to be, you know, on the trail with good fortune and good weather all the way up until end of November, maybe. Hopefully then I'll be at the New Mexico border.
Right on. It's pretty incredible. Yeah, that. I did a little research on it, and it's looking like, yeah, about 7,900 miles you'll have hiked when you complete that. Does that sound pretty accurate?
At least.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not just the miles I've done on the long trail or anything else.
Well, yeah.
I'm not going to toot my own horn, but I'm after I get done with the CDT, it'll be well over 8,000 miles.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Right on, Chewy. Hey, thanks for coming on, and hope you guys learned something today.
Yeah, so I'll be your Paul Schaefer here coming up.
Every podcast from here on out will be co-hosted by Chewy in the top right corner on YouTube.
I'll have to get my drum set out.
Oh God, that's why I hate Paul Schaefer. It's just like the corny music.
Yeah, or his piano or whatever he had. And
From my experience, people like the guy. I can't stand Paul Schaefer. I don't know why. I don't know why. All right, buddy. Thanks for coming on. Great. So Chewy came on, told us all about the 7 principles of leave no trace. So again, pass the doobie, left my Rasta brada. So hope you guys learned something today. Please comment on YouTube and give us some feedback as far as what you learned, what you think, how we went wrong, how we can improve the podcast. And please, please, for the love of God, please just go on the Apple Podcast and just leave a rating, a 5-star rating and a review. Because I just spend time editing this. And if you don't do that, then this thing can't grow and we can't all grow as a community. So please, please just go and leave a rating and a review or else I'll cry some more. And we don't need this on the podcast. We don't need tears. We need love. So support the WILDERTAINMENT podcast where we tell entertaining wilderness adventure stories. I have to end this. I can't do this anymore. This is the last episode. If you've been listening in on the Rescue Swimmer Mindset podcast, then you should probably go and subscribe to the WILDERTAINMENT podcast on Spotify as well, because we're leaving. Very soon, the WILDERTAINMENT podcast will become its own entity, and it will leave the Rescue Swimmer Mindset podcast. And soon, we will have a plane crash story that we're going to be sharing on here. And we have another couple of great guests that have been into some crazy, entertaining wilderness adventure stories that are going to shock your very core. So go ahead and subscribe before we're off the Rescue Swimmer Mindset podcast. Goodbye.